Spring is here, spring is here. Life is Skittles and life is beer. And it's the perfect season to answer questions asked by $3 supporters at Patreon and Subscribestar in March. If you'd like to ask a question for April, the links are below. Let's start on Subscribestar, where FunWithFacts asks, Hi Shane, what are your thoughts on the Senate filibuster? Should we keep it, reform it, or abolish it? I don't really care. Keep it if it helps keep the Senate from passing any new bills. Most of the ones they pass are crap. On my list of reforms of the federal government, that one would be way at the bottom if it's there at all. For those who don't know, the U.S. Senate has a rule that at any time, any one of them can stand up and talk for any length about anything they want. Sometimes, if they want to stop a vote or delay something, they'll get up and talk for hours and hours about this and that, and there may be more than one person involved and they just keep yielding to each other, and they can keep that going indefinitely. You can see this dramatized in the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It takes 60 votes of the 100-member Senate to stop a filibuster. The longest filibuster in history was in 1964, when Democrats filibustered the 1964 Civil Rights Act for 75 days to prevent its passage. The longest filibuster by a single person was Strom Thurmond, who spoke for 24 hours 18 minutes to stop the Civil Rights Act of 1957. The filibuster is supposed to act as a check on majority power and ensure that the Senate passes bills by consensus rather than tyranny of the majority. It encourages compromises and can stop the kind of partisan radicalization you see in the House. My personal favorite reform, and yes, I'm shamelessly swiping this from Robert Heinlein's The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, would be to amend the Constitution so that any bill must pass both houses by 2/3 to become law, but either house can repeal a law with only a 1/3 vote. Think about it. If a whole third of the country, however you count it, by population or by state, thinks something shouldn't be a law, how can you justify keeping it on the books? Tomasz Urbański asks, Hi, can I have your opinion on what's presented by Sabine in this episode? And he gives us a link to a video titled, Scientists Warn of AI Collapse. First of all, I absolutely love Sabine Hassenfelder. Any given video of hers, the safe money is on me agreeing with it. I think she gives a fresh and skeptical approach to a lot of modern science you don't normally get on science channels. Here she's mirroring a concern I made in a recent Lord Killian video where Runway AI was bragging about how they were going to increase diversity in their model by using their AI to generate more diverse people and feeding that back into it. I gave all sorts of reasons why that's a bad idea. I followed that up with another video describing the real problem of bias in AI and how retraining it with AI images is just no solution because you just end up reinforcing that. Sabine showed it with elephants. The pictures AI gives you of elephants just aren't as diverse as the images they're trained on. So reinforcing that is just going to make things worse, in addition to all of the problems of things like elephants with 5 legs and 2 trunks. Check out the video and make sure to subscribe to her channel. Dickin Myanus asks, How is your Ryzen PC still going? Does it keep up with whatever latest software you're running? Yep, still working great. Not that I wouldn't upgrade if I had the money, because later ones are even faster, but it really helped a few years ago when I put in an RTX 3060. That really helped with a lot of things, from Blender to the AI models. Most of the big and fast things I need to run use the GPU, so that seems to matter a lot more than the processor. I can't run a lot of the larger LLMs, but that's a memory limit on the 12GB 3060 instead of the computer itself. It'll run them, just slow. But getting a video card with more VRAM would fix that. I could also make it faster with a more modern SSD. So while I'd like to get a newer computer and I think it would be great, even without the funds for it, there are still smaller upgrades I can do with it for the time being. I can spend the money other places and get better bang for it, like new camera equipment. Let's move over to Patreon, where DeltaWolf asks, While we are fully aware of how the federal government dismisses our constitutional rights, How do we protect ourselves from state and local governments from doing so? I have seen some people justify states infringing on our rights, mainly gun and free speech, by saying, well, the Constitution only applies to the federal government. Yeah, that's not true at all. The Constitution makes all sorts of restrictions on the states, the Bill of Rights included. The 14th Amendment made that explicit. Whoever's saying that hasn't followed Supreme Court precedent for the last 150 years or so. And if anything, it's easier to protect against encroachments by government as they become more local. Think about it. How much does your one voice carry in a presidential election versus that of a small-town mayor? Darth Vega asks, I wanted to thank you for your video. Regulating AI is destructive. I welcome new technology, but everything new and scary has to be regulated to save us from it. Government sucks. Why exactly is the American healthcare system so screwed up? Why are drug prices so high? I know the answer is government, but I was wondering if you could talk specifics. I've got several videos that cover this, two in particular. The first is how to argue for universal healthcare, which I'm still proud of and a lot of people say is one of my best videos. The other is a video I made back before Obamacare. Everyone was insisting that we absolutely need the Affordable Care Act because the free market screwed up healthcare. So I made the video, How to Fix Healthcare Without Spending a Dime. And if you search the channel, I've also got videos on the FDA and the CDC and how they actually make things worse, not better. If you're talking drug prices, the FDA and Congress through the Kefauver-Harris Amendment in 1962 makes it so difficult to get drugs through the FDA system, it can generally take up to a decade and $1 billion to get a single drug approved. And those delays are bad for us. Several different studies have found that FDA delays have caused far more lives to be lost than saved. There's no way to get an accurate count, it's basically a Fermi estimate, but numbers range from the hundreds of thousands to the millions. So yes, that results in an enormous cost of drugs, not just in dollars, but in lives as well. And finally, Sid Padmanaban asks, in the mid to late 1990s, crime dropped massively after peaking in the early 90s. The most common answers I've heard as to why this drop happened are almost always an increase in police officers, incarceration, and police funding. What are your thoughts on this? It's idiotic. If more police and funding dropped crime, we'd have seen it drop much earlier. Likewise, if gun control had anything to do with it, we'd see it going up and down at different times. If anything, the drop in crime is associated with more states passing right-to-carry laws. In all of these cases, you can show it to be bogus by asking just one question. Why did no one making these claims predict that crime would drop ahead of time? I think it's just a case of asking the wrong question. If you look at crime statistics over time, the more obvious question is not why crime dropped afterward, but why was crime in the 90s so high to begin with? 'Cause that was pretty unprecedented. One big reason was the war on drugs, in particular the crack epidemic. The crackdowns on cocaine in black communities caused crack, which gives you a bigger high for a lower price, to get pushed by dealers more and more. This was associated with an increased crime rate, especially homicides, among black males below the age of 25, at a time when those rates were decreasing in older black males. Likewise, the drop in crime of the 1990s corresponds with the fall of the crack market, which happened as enforcement became more sensible, as well as other alternatives hitting the black market. You see a similar effect happening now with fentanyl, with a small uptick in crime corresponding with greater enforcement of illicitly manufactured fentanyl coming across the border. Just like with prohibition, crackdowns on alcohol made crime skyrocket and created a border crisis with Mexicans smuggling tequila across the border. And no one ever seems to learn. There's also some evidence that crime rates among the boomer generation were unusually high, and the 1990s was the time when the boomers were largely growing out of the age groups more likely to engage in violent crime. They were just a more violent generation and became less violent as they aged out of that demographic. I've also covered before how so-called gentrification drops crime rates even when you don't count people moving in and out of the area, The same people commit fewer crimes in more diverse neighborhoods. And there was a good amount of that in the 90s. Also, and this'll piss off the bordertarians, but it's true, cities with increased immigration have lower crime rates because immigrants are more upwardly mobile, and the period of the 90s was a time of rising immigration. There are probably other contributing factors as well, such as people carrying less cash, cars getting more secure, things like that, but really, nothing explains it like the rise and fall of the crack epidemic. So thanks so much for watching. Until next time, comments for the comment god, shares for the share throne. Please hit like, subscribe, and the bell, and check out other videos on my channel and like and share them as well to get them above the shadow banning. Again, I cannot stress enough how much that helps. And of course, go to donate.bogosity.tv for all sorts of ways to support, including PayPal, Venmo, and various cryptocurrencies. Thanks again, and until next time, stay strong and be free.